Hey guys, this is My Leak. This is the My Taught You podcast, and I'm really excited about this podcast today. I am going to introduce you to my friend Spencer Humphrey that I met years and years ago. I think I was maybe 21 or 22 when I met Spencer. Spencer's is the person that I call when I need business and entrepreneur book ideas, or I'm always curious to know what he's reading because he's like the GOAT of knowing exactly what book you need at the exact time. Spencer is a husband and father of 4 girls, a home cook, avid reader, photographer, explorer, serial entrepreneur, lifestyle designer, storyteller, and he rides around with a kayak in the trunk of his Prius. He once started a business because a vegetarian ate his ribs and fed them to her baby. He spent 7 years in college, and welcome, Spencer.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Miley.
Of course. So I am going to share before we get into these books that I have read some of the books. I have not read them all. Now I have to, but I don't know if I've ever told my podcast crew. I think I got an internship at Unilever, sponsored by Essence Magazine, when I was 21 or 22. I cannot remember because I spent 5 or 6 years. I think I spent 6 years in college. And I was sitting at this dinner. So I got the job, and maybe like a month into the job, they planned this dinner with the founders of Essence and Susan Taylor. And it's this massive table, and I'm sitting next to Ed Lewis, who was, I think, the president or founder at the time. I should know. But anywho, he and I started talking. He asked me to order the wine, and I had just gone wine tasting with my previous internship in San Francisco. Long story short, we talked for hours. He asked me if I had ever been to the Essence Festival, and I was just like, no. And he asked why, and I'm like, well, I could either afford one thing: the flight, the hotel, the ticket, or, and so he excused himself. He came back and he handed me his business card, and it had his assistant's phone number. And he was like, how would you like to be my guest to the Essence Festival this weekend? And I was like blown away, like, oh my God. And so I get to the Essence Festival, I'm by myself, and I think I sold one of my tickets one night. And I think the person who bought the ticket was you.
I did. So actually what happened, I bought a fake ticket.
Oh no. Oh, that's right. Youth to be young.
So I bought a fake ticket, showed up at the door. They were like, the ticket's fake. And of course, this was like 2003. So I didn't have a lot of money. And back then, I guess I'll just say how old I am. I think like the new thing right now is people are saying they're old Atlanta. Well, I'm like old Essence Fest. So the thing back then was the last night at Essence, Maze and Frankie Beverly would perform, and you needed to be there, and you needed to be like on the floor. Like you couldn't just go and be like, in the 400 level or whatever. Like you had to be on the floor so you could do like the Soul Train line with a lady. Like it was like a party. And so I was with a fraternity brother. I'm going to go ahead and say he loaned me the money. We bought second tickets, but this time I had the guy bring me to the door so we could make sure that they weren't fake tickets.
Right.
And these were like seats that were probably like 3rd or 4th row, or like, it was something like really amazing and close to the stage. And then I basically sat down next to you and we became friends.
That's exactly it. I had all these tickets for every night, Spencer, and I was by myself, and Mr. Lewis gave me tickets to the box, like the Essence box. He gave me like, I think it was 2nd or 3rd row seats for every night. He gave me access to everything. Essence paid for my hotel room, at the Hilton. Like they paid for my flight. Like it was mind blowing. And it's that sort of thing that you just never forget. I remember overnighting him a thank you when I got back. Like you just didn't have to do this. And just the way he talked about his daughters and what was so at that dinner, he talked about his daughters, and one of my good girlfriends is one of his daughters. And I just saw her recently. So it's just such a crazy small world that like the last night I was like, you know what, I should at least try to make, I'm young. Let me at least try to make, I think I sold the ticket for like $100, which was like a grip to me back then. So I was like, let me just sell my ticket. And here we are. So that's a story people probably didn't know. I want to get into these books. So Spencer put together a list of 6 books. And trust me when I tell y'all, like, I'm not pretending when I say Spencer is like the GOAT when it comes to these entrepreneur and business books. Like, this is the person that I always want to know what he's reading. So Spencer, the first book that you have, and Spencer is a serial entrepreneur. He has succeeded at this. I want to talk about your first book, Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. Tell me about this book.
So Peter Drucker is like the father of modern day business. He died, I think, probably 10 or so years ago at like the age of 90. And, wow. He was the one writing about business before anyone else. One of his books that I really like, that I still haven't even finished because it's kind of boring stuff, is called Effective Executive. But
I've heard of that.
Managing Oneself is something that I read or try to read once or twice a year, because it's really a self-awareness piece. It's really about knowing who you are and being okay with it. So one of the things that I'm okay with telling people, for example, is like, hey, I was in college 7 years. And, part of it is because I wasn't in college 7 years because I was dumb or because I wasn't smart enough. I just wasn't in the right environment, the right learning environment. And then actually I graduated in May, started grad school in August, made straight A's the first year of grad school. I think I had 1 B and got a full scholarship for the second year of grad school. And I was the same person. And so sometimes I think we fail, and it's not because we're not the right person. We're just not self-aware enough to know that we're in the right situation.
Wow.
And this book really asks like 7 really key questions. What are my strengths? What am I good at? Am I auditory? Am I a listener? How do I perform? What are my values? Where do I belong? What should I contribute? And then responsibility for relationships. And then it starts to also talk about like the second half of your life, or like a second career, because he's sort of speaking on the premise that we'll be working for 50 years. And I'll say that all of that has like helped me at different phases of my life. I first discovered it in 2001, 15 years ago, when I was probably like 20 years old or 22 years old. And it's something that still helps me now, like 15 years later, regardless of how my life has changed. So I think that if you're an avid reader, if you're an avid self-help person, I think this piece is sort of a foundation. It's kind of like knowing how to do multiplication before you can move on to calculus or algebra. But it's a piece that'll really kind of help you ask some questions and really assess who you are and help you really be okay with it so that you can put your best foot forward.
That's so true. It's like so often I see it happening all the time. It's like people are addicted to things that they can't do. So it's like so many people want to be like the marketer or the designer, but like that's not really their best skill set. It's like you have to really figure out what you do and what you do well. And it's like, if you want to be popular at something, you have to get good at what you do. I think some people want the popularity that comes along with this particular career. But you can get popular by being you and being dope at you, if that's what you want.
I think being dope at you is like key. And actually, I got one more story, and I just be honest. Like, in 2008, I was working at, and this is kind of also how I became an entrepreneur. I was working at the Home Depot. I was in a leadership program, and basically I got fired. You know, it was weird. I think it was more of a cultural fit, and probably it had a lot to do with my self-awareness more than it was just like I couldn't do the work or that I had messed up on something. And after that, I worked some job for like 6 weeks. They flew me to Boston. They gave me like training. It was like a consulting firm. So I sat at home for a month doing nothing, and then they laid me off. And then I spent like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months applying for business school, taking the GMAT, working with a tutor. And then I bombed the GMAT. I got rejected by 5 business schools. And I was like, you know, making this plan to retake the GMAT, and I was just going to do really well, and I was going to knock it out. And then my wife was like, hey, like, you've got to stop these contortionist acts. You've got to like go somewhere that like is a fit for you.
Right.
And the truth is, it was like very humbling, and it was not a comfortable thing to hear, but it was so true. Like, I'm not, you know, and it's like I have a beard and I like wear jeans and no socks, and you know, most guys I know that went to business school don't have a mustache, and they like, you know, wear suits and all these things that just aren't who I am. And so I think it's really key to just be dope at who you are. Like, don't worry about being dope at being Myleik or being dope at being whoever it is. Just be you.
Right. And so one of the quotes that I got, because whenever someone sends me books, I always like to look at the quotes first or wiki it. And it says, successful careers are not planned. They develop when people are prepared for opportunities because they know their strengths, their method of work, and their values. And I just think that that's so important, because I turn down opportunities that I know are not a good fit for me. It's like, I'm not going to set myself up to fail that. It's like, I know what I'm good at. I know how I work, and I know what's important to me, you know? And so I will do some things because I turn down some things because they're not aligned with my values.
I agree.
Yes. So I love it. The next book that you have on your list, Spencer, is a book that I am at the very end of reading. I think I have like 20 pages left. Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, who I am interviewing next week. I'm very excited about that.
That is, I wish I could be there for the interview.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. But I picked the book up because I like the size of it. You know, it's a book you can carry around. And so that's what usually messes me up, is that the books are too big, but this is a purse carry for me. But tell me what you liked about this.
Am I allowed to cuss?
Yes.
Okay. So I think Hooded Kermit the Frog and
I know you.
And the hashtag petty have really gotten us as a culture fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really got us fucked up. I think that, you know, Hooded Kermit, it's funny, it's cool, but I'm really worried that we as a culture are starting to we're starting to really believe our hype almost to a point of like diminishing return. And I think that the point is to really talk about how dope you are, how fly you are, how much money you have, how you're a boss, how you're all these things, fill in the blank. And I think that sometimes it's okay to just really like forget about yourself and to focus on the work. To be humble and to be persistent, to value discipline and results, and not necessarily like passion and confidence.
Okay.
And, I think that the book really does a good job of just letting you know that, like, the way that the world values, being full of yourself and being about self is not necessarily what you need to be successful. And he really talks about and gives example after example after example, historical context of, like, how people have ruined themselves with their ego. He talked about his mentor at a clothing company. I'm not going to mention the clothing company because they need to come sponsor the podcast. But
they went out of business.
Oh, well,
they're shutting down all 140 stores. That was in the news a couple days ago, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, he had a mentor. I'm still not gonna name drop him.
Don't name
him. A mentor at a clothing company, and he talked about how that guy imploded and how he imploded his career, his life, his marriage because of his ego. I'm a football guy, and even if you're not into football, just as a business, I think the New England Patriots and the way they do things is amazing. And he talks about their coach, Bill Belichick, and a technique that he used called canvassing. And a big part of the canvassing is that, you're not out trying to outshine your boss. You're trying to make your boss look good. And I think that, like, as business people, regardless of where you are in your career, you've got to, like, be able to, like, be humble enough sometimes and realize that it's about your customer and it's about what your customer needs. It's about what your customer wants. And it's about making your customer look good. And that customer could be a boss if you're employed at a job, or it could actually be a vendor if you own a business, someone who does business with you that you actually pay money to, or it could be a customer who gives you actual money. But I just think that, in this time, like, it really is key for us to really just humble ourselves and have, like, a really good assessment of who and where we are. And it's not to say that we're belittling our achievements, but it's just saying that, like, we're able to kind of detach ourselves from that and just, again, it's humility and persistence. It's value and value the discipline and the results. It's about just doing the work and not worrying about shining. One thing that the book talked about that really, really, really stuck out to me the most was talk.
Okay.
And one of the things they were saying is that when you do a lot of talking about what you're going to do, you trick your mind into thinking that the work is done.
Right. Yeah, that was my favorite thing. You tricked yourself into thinking that you did it.
Yes. And so, if you ever see, like, the person who's on Instagram, in the gym every day saying they're going to have the Beyonce body by summer and 5 years later they don't have it, that might be it. Or if you've got a friend who's been saying that they're going to start a business, like I have a friend I met years ago who was starting a fashion line or something, and that person still hasn't done it. And I think sometimes talking can really get in the way. And one of the things that he said was that talking and doing fight for the same resources.
Damn.
So, and I think for me, as I even reflect on my own failures, I really have to think back to, like, what role ego had. And really, for me, it's a daily fight, especially, like, as a Black man, because I think in our culture, hypermasculinity and, like, machismo and being macho is, like, the thing. And so I have to really, like, quiet that and fight that and die to it every day. Like, I face my own Hooded Kermit, except I tell Hooded Kermit to fuck off or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I do.
Better.
Yeah. When I shared this book and you told me, like, this book, like you said, like, changed you, one of your favorites. And first, it's super digestible. I know that for those who may be like I'm a 48 Laws of Power girl, but I love how digestible the context is, the stories that he tells. And I think that a thought that I was having the other night is that you can, in reading, you will find example after what works and what doesn't, and then it becomes your choice of where you want to be and what you want to do. And I think so often, as an employer, I see ego, and it's like, you did one thing, or, and now one thing, it's like you can't, I'm struggling, but it's like you can't live off that. Every day I have to wake up and every day I have to wake up and be a beginner, right? It's like I cannot get consumed in what I may have achieved, because that mindset will attack me. It's like I can't rest. I come as an intern, as an assistant, as a boss daily. I get bummed out too at all the #girlboss, #boss moves. And I'm like, where is your boss move? It's not a social media post.
Or how are you a boss and you're not writing a check for anyone? Because it's like, if you as someone who has employed people and dealt with cash flow and dealt with making payroll and the fear of oh my gosh, I might miss it and the check could bounce and whatever else. When you really a boss, it's almost like a curse and not a gift. It's not something that you're going to be flexing about, because you'll probably be somewhere worried and stressed about whatever. It's funny because I remember once I had a guy that set a trash can on fire or something, and the fire department came, and it was just this big ordeal. But the thing is when you're really truly a boss, mm-hmm. That's pressure, it's stress. And I'm not saying it's not a good thing or it's an honor and a privilege, but it's deeper than flexing on social media.
Oh, it's so much deeper. It's like when the letters from the IRS come, do they come to you? When, when it's time to pay for the insurance, who pays for that? I don't, today I had to mail off my taxes. I'm just everybody is not as fun of a stunt, if you will. It's an occasional, I'm in charge, but when you're in charge, everybody is coming after you. So one of my favorite, I have so many favorite quotes in Ego is the Enemy, but he says, impressing people is utterly different from being truly impressive. You know what I mean? It's to be a truly impressive person. And I just think that another one, your potential, the absolute best you're capable of, that's the metric to measure yourself against. Your standards are winning is not enough. People can get lucky and win. People can be assholes and win. Anyone can win, but not everyone is the best possible version of themselves, which I think takes us back to your first book. It's a great segue of get your own shit together. Check your ego. And then we're going to move into your third book, which is The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. This is a book that I haven't read. So tell me why you love The Ultimate Sales Machine.
So The Ultimate Sales Machine, I think it's one of those books that you could have for 15 years and it could probably help you at different phases of your career. I don't necessarily think it's a book that a person in their 20s could read straight through and find practical. But what I really like about it is that it's very practical and it gives you sort of an ABC 1, 2, 3. It's almost like a Betty Crocker recipe. 2 eggs, your stick of butter, your milk, you mix it. It tells you it gives you a prescription. And I think that that's very practical, because a lot of the books we read sometimes are very theoretical and they hype us up, but then we leave them and we're like, well, what do I do next? Where am I going? What's my next move? And there's actually some points that I want to bring out. So even if your audience doesn't read the book, I thought that this was like really key. And it was about time management secrets of billionaires. Number one, touch it once. If you touch it, take action.
Yes.
So, don't open that email or letter until you're ready to deal with it.
I love that. I love that. Last night, not to cut you off, but to cut you off because I just did. But last night, there was something that I wanted to do in the morning. And I saw, I emailed Diana about it, and she emailed me back that night. And it was that thing of once I clicked it open, I just finished it. Like I felt bad because I was supposed to be doing something. And I was like, okay, I'm finishing this thing all the way through because it's necessary. You can't leave shit hanging. So my favorite. Okay. Touch it once.
So next is make lists. And what he says is that you should make a list of the 6 most important things that you need to do and get done each day.
I love that.
And what I do is the night before I do it, because what I find is when I make my list the day of, it might be noon and I've got nothing done because I'm overwhelmed or whatever. But it's like, if you make your list the night before, you keep it to 6 because 6 is sort of manageable. And if you start your list before you start email, before you start social media, before you start checking voicemails, it allows you to be very proactive and not reactionary. Because if not, then you'll look up and all you ever do is respond to email or surf social media. The next thing, the third thing, is plan how much time you'll allocate to each task. So if you've got 6 things, you may say, hey, look, I'm going to do item number 1 on my task list between 9 and 11.
Okay.
And I think that really helps. And then it also lets you know, like, what important initiatives are just, you're not just getting to because they take too much time. Then you can also start to like break them into small chunks. The next thing he talks about is planning your day. So an hour by hour schedule and sticking to it.
Okay.
The 5th thing is prioritizing. So you got that list, but you've got to figure out what's most important. You've got to like be productive and not necessarily the easy work or the fun work, but you've got to figure out what's most productive. And then the final is ask yourself, will it hurt me to throw this away? So, basically in terms of like paper, clutter, emails, basically it's okay to get your inbox to 0. It's okay that you don't hang on to every scrap or every note or every whatever. You just ask like, hey, can I let this go and will it help me? I love it. The next thing, which I think is probably for people who are probably a little further in their career or people who are running like mature and established businesses. He has a part on meetings and he gives some really like key insight and templates into how to run a meeting. He gives some insights also into how to implement policies. So, when you're growing a company or you've got a startup, he's got a really good template for how you can implement policies. And then finally, he's got some really good keys for hiring people. One of the things that I've struggled with and probably some of the biggest mistakes I've ever made is like in hiring. And I'll say that now when I deal with people that I work with in various capacities, I'll kind of know early on, like if it's going to work or not. And if it's not going to work, I'll part ways. But that just comes from having made many costly mistakes. And so even with hiring, that could even be like, the person that you choose to do your nails, the person you choose to do your hair. It doesn't just come to being like an employer, but just the various people you bring into your lives to do services. So I think that there's a lot for everyone at every level, but I also think it's a book that depending on where you are in your career, some parts may not be as relevant, but definitely one of those that you just keep on the shelf as a classic and a reference book for different times.
I'm going to order that. I've got some Barnes and Noble gift cards and Amazon gift cards. What's crazy is that I wonder if I will become a billionaire, because that's literally how I do it. Last night, I made a list, and I always have at least 6 things, the most important things I need to do by priority. Obviously, the number one priority today is to mail my to make sure I didn't do it, but to make sure my assistant mails off the taxes today, you know? So it's like, I have a list of things to do. I plan my day hour by hour. I had this on my schedule to chat with you at 11 o'clock. I know what I have to do. I know when my next meeting is. It's like, I always say that, like, my superpower is time management. You have to make the most use of your time. People who get up every day without a plan scare me. It's like, you can't let the days get away from you, because they turn into weeks, months, and years, and nothing has happened. So I'm getting that. Thank you, Spencer. What?
I think the book will really help you. And the next time we have lunch, there's even some things I want to like talk about that aren't necessarily for the whole audience, that I think
that you think I can be better at,
or both of us. But I think even just back to our last text conversation, I think that there's some things specifically in the book that'll help you. That just came to me just now. I don't know if you can edit that out, but it just came.
No, it's fine. I can leave it. I think, but because I think it's important for people to know something about me, and something about you too, is that one thing that I'm certain of is that I am not perfect. One thing that I need in friendships is honesty, and I need to grow, you know, and it's like, I need people to call me on my shit constantly, because I always say this, if you keep yourself around people who are me too and yes ma'am, and everything you say and do is right, you end up being like Mariah Carey on that Cribs episode in like glitter high heels and butterfly booty shorts. It's like, you need somebody to tell you when your dress is up. You need somebody to tell you when you are not, you don't have it fully together. And that's just what I appreciate in all of my friendships. So I will get it. And I definitely would like to discuss it. And there was something that we covered, I want to say 2 books ago, that was like, when you were saying, something that it was what you said. And I thought about this, about people looking at themselves as businesses and their boss, or who they're serving as their customer, right? So it's like imagining yourself as a small company, regardless of what it is that you're doing. I think it's a mindset shift. And so I was thinking, I wonder how many people go to work every day and they have it mixed up. They're looking like, oh, I serve this person, not realizing that they are their own small business serving their boss, a customer. And I just needed to do a little mindset shift, and I got it in that conversation. So I hear you. I hear you. I got it 2 books ago. So next book that you have on your list is a book that I have read. And I think this is a book that you referred to me almost like 7 years ago. Because I know that I got this from you. And this is Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. And you said initially you weren't going to mention this book. Why weren't you going to mention this?
I think the last book, all the books that I've mentioned thus far, are books that I kind of read within the last year. I think that Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek is a little dated. It's a little
bit of a lie.
It's great marketing. But if I'm truthful with myself, this book is what's really shaped and molded me into who I am and how I do things.
Agreed.
This book isn't about working 4 hours a week. And if you follow him now, he'll admit that he works more than 4 hours a week. But I think that this book is about creating the life that best fits you, and it fits your interests and personalities. And so I feel like if you follow me on social media, like I had someone once ask me if I was a drug dealer or if I,
oh my God,
trust fund.
You do look a little trust fundy, Spencer, I have to say. Your life,
I so wish
your life looks trust funded.
No, I don't.
Kayaking, Cuba.
No, I wish.
Okay.
But maybe my kids. But I work in a way that works for me. And I figured out also ways to like fund my lifestyle that either means that it's funded in a way where I don't necessarily have to like kill myself for 80 hours or where I can fund my lifestyle at a fraction of the cost. So for example, they ask like, what would you do if you had $100 million? And, your thing might be that you would buy an island. And, an island might cost 100 million to buy. But the truth is like maybe for 10 grand, there's an island somewhere in the Bahamas that you could rent for a week. And if you brought 5 friends, you could have that island for a week for 2 grand. So I'm always thinking about hacks and ways to like live my life that allows me to afford a lifestyle that works for me in terms of like freedom and flexibility of my time, but then also allows me to like have the experiences I want.
Okay, so after I think you and I had we had a lunch and you told me about the 4-hour work week, I went on Craigslist because that's where you went back in the day. That was like pre-social media. So I went on Craigslist and I found a sort of virtual assistant, a person that I think I was paying a little bit more because I had a little bit more intensive work, but I think it was like $100 a week. And that person still works with me to this day. So you think this is a 6-7 year relationship that I pay much more for now. But I think the greatest lesson that I got was about like outsourcing the outsourceable, like try to, so that you can focus on driving the business or ownership or whatever, but like try to get as many things done as you can.
Exactly. I think as a manager and as a boss or owner or whatever, you've got to do only the things that only you can do. And the things that other people can do, you make them into a replicatable process that can be repeated and that can be measured, and you outsource it, and then everything else you do because only you can do it, but the rest of it you free yourself up from. So, one of the things that I really hate, I don't know if you do this, and if you do, then I'll apologize in advance. But one of the things I really hate is when I see people, this really, really, really annoys me, on the beach or at the pool, like today's office.
Oh, I've done it. I used to do that.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
To me,
I've grown. Spencer, I've grown. Okay.
But when I see people do that, it makes me say they're not really winning. They're not really a boss, that they're actually unorganized and don't know how to either delegate or manage their time, that they're just so buried that when they're on a remote island with the person they love, or when it's a sunny day and they're at the pool, that they can't just be and enjoy that moment because they're probably dealing with so many BS issues that someone else is probably better suited to handle. Not even that it's about beneath you, but it's like there are other people better suited to handle it.
Okay, now this is the part where I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
I think that when I think about the times that I have done like today's office, or, this is where I'm working. One thing that I got from the 4-hour work week is that, you can do your work from anywhere. It's like I can do my work from anywhere. And I think that's the message that's being communicated is that I'm not out here all day. You know, if you see me out here in a bikini and I've got a couple cocktails and this is today's office is not an 8-hour work day. If it's even, 3, sometimes I just think it's like, it's Tuesday morning. I have to get up and knock out a couple things. How nice is it that I can come over here for an hour or two and get some work done? So I hear you.
So it is. So I think it's what do they call it? A nomad? Is it a global?
Yeah. So sort of just saying, yes.
Digital office. Yeah. Okay.
Digital office. Yeah. So maybe we'll start saying today's digital office.
Yes.
Yeah. But I hear you. I don't know. I think that, I know that I have changed a ton from when I first started. And I think I see a lot of people, and I see that everybody goes through these different like layers and phases of like freedom, of new money. And it's like the first thing you want to do is you want to show off the freedom, and then you want to show off the dough. And then it's just like, I think as you get comfortable being in a new bracket or experiencing a new lifestyle, because let's just face it, most of us didn't have this stuff or didn't grow up with this stuff. Our parents told us that we would have to get a job with benefits and we would have to be chained to a desk all day, and that we wouldn't have freedom, that we couldn't like our work. And I just think that everybody is just kind of screaming like, yes, we can, if you will. But I think it eventually tapers off. Like, I think it's normal and natural. My accountant and my wealth manager call it your trick off years. Like, when it's new, you got to trick a little bit, and then you go, okay, this back to me, and I think that that's really what it is. Like, I don't own a Chanel purse. I just, because with or without money, I just don't think that that's who I am, if you will. Like, I think about spending $10,000 on something, and I think about having $10,000 appreciated in the bank, and that's just who I am as a person. But everybody goes through that, Spencer. Let them have their moment. Let them have today's office.
Okay,
but I hear you.
I was a hater.
You were being a hater right there. Yes, you were being a hater, but it's okay. We forgive you.
All right.
But I got your point. So your next book is Smart Cuts by Shane Snow, which I have your notes on, but I have not read this book. Tell me about it.
So Smart Cuts is really where I am right now.
Okay.
I'm very anti-credential, meaning that, and I have an advanced degree, I've been to grad school, college, all that. But I think that like education right now is sort of a big bubble. And I think that there are a lot of people spending a lot of money in a lot of ways for traditional education, thinking that it will sort of lockstep or ladder them into a career, into a job, into a fill in the blank. And in most cases, they end up with like debt, or they don't necessarily end up reaching their goal. I like Smart Cuts because it's a study about how successful people take shortcuts and they bypass like the long, slogging, dues paying process. And it's based on a premise that you can sort of lateral your way into something larger. And it talks about something called lateral thinking. And lateral thinking doesn't like replace hard work. It just eliminates like unnecessary cycles. So it's like once you sort of shorten your path, overachievers will look for more ways to do effort in their work. And so one of the patterns that they talked about were like our US presidents, and that most US presidents lateral their way. Like they don't necessarily climb a ladder of like, being a local, official, then being a state official, then being in Congress, then, it's sort of like they basically will reach achievement or a pinnacle in one career, and then they will lateral that success to like a different career. And I guess like a good quote from the book or a good premise is like switching ladders can help you bypass dues and accelerate to a bigger or better cycle. So my photography right now, I basically got a camera from my wife last Christmas of 2015. And I spent 2016 honing my skills as a photographer. And I feel like there were people who I started out shooting with who were better than me that I'm probably better than now. And a big part of it was that I found and sought out the best people in the business, like the best photographers. And I would meet up with them, and I'd pay for a workshop, or I'd like study a YouTube video. And I basically, as a photographer, sort of let pass like certain areas or certain parts of the career that some people spend years and years breaking through from, just by like spending time with people that gave me essentially like a smart cut.
Gotcha.
So, one other thing about it is that it says, we can spend thousands of hours practicing until we're a master at a skill, or we can convince a world-class practitioner to guide our practice and cut the time to mastery significantly.
I agree. I definitely agree. I always say, like, there's some people that I mentor and I go, you could have saved yourself a whole lot of heartache and drama by just going and getting a job at the top place for a little while. But, that's okay. There's the long route and then the even longer route.
Yes.
So, okay, I want to talk about Deep Work by Cal Newport, because I think I'm going to like this one.
I'm gonna exhale.
You got some notes on here. Deep Work.
Deep Work. Wow. So this book is about shutting out distraction for deep, productive, concentrated work.
Okay.
And basically, our culture has basically shifted towards a shallow work. And it's basically exposing a massive opportunity for the few who recognize the potential of resisting this trend and prioritizing depth. And so when I say shallow work, it's like we all know how to work an iPhone. We all know how to take really good selfies. There's those things that we pride ourselves on being really good at, but my 5-year-old kids could probably pick up on the skill, with a little bit of instruction.
Right.
This book really, categorizes deep work as like professional activities that are performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that will push your cognitive abilities to their limits.
Okay.
And these are efforts that create new values and improve your skills. So, it really just talks about doing the work that matters. And, it talks about a deliberate practice, of finding ways to really cut out the distraction. And so, he talks about different extremes from people who don't own an email address and who you can't reach any way possible. And they just they'll just sort of, they'll make themselves unavailable and just do deep research. And that's typically your PhDs or people who are doing some type of scientific research or something scientific based, all the way down to maybe a salesperson who has a frantic schedule that's sort of stop and start. But I think that in times like these, in an economy like the one we're in, I think part of what helps people set themselves apart is their ability to have that area or that skill that they know better than anyone else, or the ability to put out quality work in a really fast time frame. I think those are the skills that set people apart, not necessarily the people that sit somewhere and do exactly what they're told to do all day. And so I think that this book really helps us figure out like how to batch hard and important intellectual work in the long uninterrupted stretches. And it's almost like a fitness program for your mind, for like your cognitive thinking.
That's amazing. You have a note here that says, a succession of mediocre singers does not add up to a single outstanding performance. In other words, talent is not a commodity you can buy in bulk and combine to reach the needed levels. There's a premium to being the best.
That's key.
Yeah. Like you have to go deep and do the deep work. And I have a couple. I think there's a quote. It says, if you don't produce, you won't thrive, no matter how skilled or talented you are. And I think a lot of people, more talkers, are not producing. And two core abilities for thriving in the new economy. One is the ability to quickly master hard things and the ability to produce at an elite level in terms of both quality and speed. And I think that that's what people have to understand. Quality and quick.
And you can't do that if you're checking Instagram every 10 minutes.
No, I think, and maybe Spencer, you can help me, but it's like, I'm really trying to think about ways that people can like, I don't know that some people know how to do deep work. Like, I think that you and I know how to focus, and we didn't grow up with social media. We didn't check it every second of the day. I think I remember I was at my second job before I got before phones could even text message. So, I think deep work is that sometimes, what is your deep work method, I guess? How do you do deep work?
So for me, it's about discipline.
Okay.
And I'll admit that I struggle with it, and that it's easy to do the fun stuff. It's easy to get caught up in social media. I actually recently put an app on my phone called Freedom.
Okay.
And it blocks my social media until I think at least 10 a.m. on most mornings.
Oh, wow.
And I also, for me personally, I check email 3 times a day.
Okay.
And that's back to even the Chet Holmes book about, touch it once. So I typically will check email at 10 a.m. I'll check email around 2 p.m. and I'll check email again at 4 p.m.
Okay.
And so for me, I don't want to become reactionary. And so if I check email the first second my feet touch the ground, then all I spend my day doing is responding to other people's requests. So usually by 10 a.m., I will have everything from 4 p.m. to 10 a.m. in my inbox. I can focus on it, address it right then and there. I try not to, and it's still something I'm like working with. I try now to do more email on my computer than my phone.
Yes.
Because I'll admit it, like I'll text and drive and do all these things, and so there'll be errors or I'll miss a point in an email. So I try to respond to an email when I can really focus and pay attention to the content. And then usually I'll let the afternoon go by, and I'll batch it and respond to another batch of emails. And then at the end of the day or close to the end of the business day, I'll respond to a final batch of emails. And the truth is that if it's an emergency, they'll probably know how to call you or text you or reach you. And this method doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but I'd say that it probably works for the majority of people. So I think one, like just getting a control of like email, getting a control of like social media. I think another thing that's sort of become an Achilles heel for me recently has been GroupMe. Just because it's like Twitter, but it's with your close friends or with people that you have a common interest in, and it's a more intimate environment. And I found that can become almost like a virtual barbershop. Like it can become that place where people just congregate and talk all day. And I'm like guilty of it, but it's just having like the discipline to really just say, you know what? I have like to really focus on my goals, and I've got to really do some really hard work to get to them, and just really trying to really shut down and some other distractions.
Yeah, I think I'm with you in the way I think I do deep work is, and I'm certain that I can go deeper. But I don't do any group chat, don't group me on anything. Don't contact me. I personally can't stand group texts. It's just not who I am. And like you said, what happens is that I have been on few group chats that was meaningful conversation or useful. It's never either, and so that's kind of just is not my thing. As far as email, I do try to stick to email on the computer. So I use my phone to sort of scan for emergencies or something like that. But I use the VIP function. So there are VIPs, people that, if they're emailing me, it's likely very important. So I go through that and see, I can look at the subject and tell if I should open it, and I usually just try to sit down and do my emails when I can. So I don't, that on the go email, I've done away with that, unless it's like a quick yes or no. But if I need to write it out, I will do it that way. But I do agree. I don't have specific times. It's just like when I sit down, I will check my email. So I haven't checked my email, but I'll check it when I get back to my office, probably at 12:30. So,
and I need specific or kind of generally specific times, because if not, what I'll do is when I'm bored or when I have like a bored moment, I'll find myself fidgeting or looking at email because I'm bored. And that's actually something, doubling back to deep work, they really talk about, is like being comfortable with being bored and sort of exercising your mental, your cognitive abilities to be able to just be present in a moment of like boredom, to not feel like you have to fill it with some sort of activity. Because one of the things that they also talked about, or he talks about in the book, is that when you take a minute to like surf the web or to surf social media, that basically your brain doesn't work like a light switch, and it takes your brain like 15 or 20 minutes. He gives like a time frame to really take your mind off of whatever it was you were doing mindless back to the focused work.
Okay.
So.
Right. And I think sometimes you do that. You got a few minutes. Oh, let me search Instagram. Yeah. I put an app on my phone a couple of days ago that I heard about on the Friend Zone podcast called Method. Is it Method? Let me see. What is it? No, because I'm lying. It's called Moment. It's the Moment app. And what it does is it logs how many hours you spend on your phone every day, how many times you pick it up, and how long you picked it up for. And it'll even tell you, how you spent it on the apps. I picked up my phone 93 times yesterday.
Oh, I'm going to try that app.
I picked it up 93 times, but I picked it up 107 times Sunday. So I was down some yesterday, but it's just like, it's just when you see that, but I do business on my phone, so I have given myself a pass, but it is interesting to see like, wow, even though I am even still handling business on the phone, do I really need to be picking up my phone 100 times a day? Damn.
Yes, it's sobering.
It is. It's that thing of like, I can do better. But the awareness, I think most of us don't have the awareness of how often we are doing it. And especially if you feel like you are lacking in some area, like people always say, how do you have time to read? Or how do you have time to do this? And I'm like, you'll be surprised at what you can do when you get serious focus to put that damn phone down,
It helps you so much, and it really helps you to be present and really just be with, even in social interactions, really be with the people you're with, as opposed to being distracted, thinking about like how you're going to record whatever moment to stunt, or even like watching the next person stunt. And it's something that I have to like
Yeah. Either you're recording the stunt or watching the stunt.
Yes. And so it's cool to just be in the moment sometimes and to really just have real interaction and to really converse and to really absorb what whoever it is you're with, whatever the setting is, has to say.
Yeah, I always think about that. I see people taking a ton of trips and I go, I wonder if you take these trips if there were no social media to stunt, I think like some people are going to go and then other people are going to stunt, which I'm not a hater. Stunt your life away. I'll be there watching. So Spencer, that was our last book. I do want to give out your social media stats. Where can everybody find you?
So I have 2 pages right now for my personal life, which is, I think, boring, but it's like my kids, my cooking, some occasional adventures, and kind of just my diary is at Black Tie ATL. And then my more professional photography portfolio page is Spencer.photografio, and that's FOTOGRAFIO.
Awesome. Thank you, Spencer. Thanks for the books, and I'll see you soon.